It's kind of hard to believe, but the Z is officially back up and running. It's running pretty good. I'm super happy with it. Doing some little testing and tuning here and there. Just really get it dialed in, work all the bugs out. In the meantime, this video today is going to be a little bit different. So I've had a couple people ask me, it'd be interesting to know your story or how you got your 300ZX or how you even got into 300ZXs to begin with. Well, to be honest, I never thought twice about these cars. This one just kind of ended up in my lap. It's kind of an interesting journey, a little bit of a long one, so I figured I'd make a good video and you guys will find this very interesting because I feel like my story is something that a lot of people can actually relate to. Owning your car for, at this point, 14, almost 15 years is guess me, it's kind of an accomplishment because in this day and age, most people, especially with cars this age, are buying and selling them within 2 years. So sit back, grab a cold one, and relax because I think this video is going to be a really good one for everyone. Also, if you haven't already, head over to billybuilds.com website. Go get yourself some 300ZX Z32 merch. This is my hooded jacket right here. I've got new merchandise being created every week. And for the next month, you can use the code BillyBuilt20. I'll put the link down in the description below as a discount code for 20% off any order. I want to give a huge shout out to those of you that have already ordered. I got orders coming in from Australia, which is freaking awesome, guys, because it really means a lot. I appreciate your support. It's truly incredible. I wasn't expecting to get orders from overseas already. In case you guys were wondering, yes, we do that. Yes, I can get it to you. Link is down in the description, guys. So head on over there, check it out. Support the channel, support your boy. We'll have more builds, more Z stuff coming your way. Thank you all. Let's get back to the video. So I'm going to start this story off with back before I owned this car, actually. I initially wanted a second gen Eclipse. Big in the Fast and Furious, like everyone else my age was. That was kind of in the cars at the time. My dream car was a second gen Eclipse. I was 14 years old. I had a list of parts that I wanted, and it was a budget below $10,000 list of things I needed for Eclipse. So as time went on, one of my dad's friends raced at the track regularly, and he ended up with the CRX. And the CRX had an engine swap, and long story short, I'd go over to his house to do some lawn work, and we'd go for test drives in this car. I eventually fell in love with this CRX. It was a B20 swap. It was pretty beat. It wasn't pretty looking by any means. I got a couple rides in the car, and I instantly fell in love. 2 years go by of doing lawn work for him. I eventually get a real job at minimum wage because it was like during the housing recession and nobody wanted to pay anything. A real job, and I eventually got enough money to buy that car. So my first car being this 1989 Honda CRX with a B20 swap in it, and no AC, no radio, nothing. But I loved the car. It was a blast to drive, and that's why I still have one today. I eventually collected all of the trim moldings for it. I straightened up the front fender as much as possible. I found some wheels for like 50 bucks. I had a neighbor up the street from me who did paint and body work, and he was helping me paint the car. Actually, if I'm being honest, he was painting it for me. And I fell in love with the Mugen body kit. It's clean, it's simple looking for the car. It gets rid of a lot of the trim, which I was actually missing. I had a lot of people hating on me for this because the car was always multicolored for a period of about 6 to 8 months while it was getting painted. But anyways, we're like 8-9 months in on this paint job body kit fit on the CRX, and I end up getting into an accident. This guy in a Mustang decided that it was a good idea to drink that night and then drive the wrong way on the road on a mildly wet, rainy, dark night. And I thought he was in the center median, but as I approached him, I realized there was no center median and I had nowhere to go. So I slammed on my brakes, slid into him about 45 miles an hour sideways, and totaled the car. The car obviously got totaled out by insurance. I had tools everywhere on the street. My battery that was in the back of the car exploded. One of the tools hit me in the back of the head, which I had to get stitches for. The state trooper actually told me that previous incidents he had seen like this, the body was separated in 2 different pieces, and I was lucky to be alive. So with the wreck from the CRX, obviously the insurance gave me money. With that money, I went ahead and I had a friend reach out to me who worked at another auto body shop, and he's like, hey, would you be interested in a Turbo 300ZX? We have one sitting here. I think it'd be a good deal for you. So I said, sure, why not? I'll come take a look at it. Well, needless to say, I went to take a look at it and I was sold instantly. They were only selling it for $4,000 to me because they thought the turbos were shot, it definitely needed paint, and there was no AC. But aside from that, the car was mostly what I thought was immaculate. I had no idea how much potential the car actually had. I went to go look at the car, test drove it. I fell in love. I loved the way it drove. It felt incredible. I wasn't driving in a tin can anymore. It was solid. So the next day I went back there with my granddad because I had to get some money up front and the insurance hadn't paid me yet, but I had somebody else looking at the car and I was like, I'm gonna buy it today. We went there and we got it. He helped me out and I paid him back as soon as I got my check from my insurance. And if it wasn't for my granddad, I probably wouldn't have the car today. So just to put this into perspective, here's me. I just turned 19, bought the car on literally April Fool's Day, 2010. This is a $4,000 car that was literally $50,000 like 15 years earlier. I was literally working at a pizza shop in the mall making $7.50 an hour. That's it. I had another job making $8 an hour at another pizza place. The instant I got it, I was like, I'm gonna hold on to this. I'm gonna keep it. I'm not gonna get rid of this car. So at the time, I actually had 2 jobs and I was going to college full time. So I was driving the car literally all over the place. I had to go out with friends. I was getting pictures taken of the car with our cheap, flip phones at the time. Like, if you look at this one picture here, the guy in the back up against the fence is actually my buddy Jason. He owned 2 DSMs, one 1G, one 2G. The 1G actually, I ended up buying years later. He passed away probably about 2 years after this photo was taken. Really cool dude, really down to earth guy. But when it came time for anything to break on the car, it was really just maintenance stuff. I had the clutch go out on me about 96,000 miles, and I believe that was the original clutch. So I had a buddy at the time who ran a shop that kind of, I don't know if this was his specialty, but he definitely knew the car very well. He had previously built one himself to make 600 horsepower, and he cut me a very good deal on the price of a clutch that he had laying around, plus an exhaust, and I even got a chip tune from Z-Tuner at the time, and that was kind of my first kind of mods to the car. I'm extremely grateful for people that helped me out in the beginning with this car because I did not know what I was really getting into, and honestly, stuff like that made a huge difference for me. From there, as I was just saying, I actually ended up tracking the car around that time a lot. Our local track to me is Bradenton Motorsports Park, which back then was owned by somebody other than it is now. And it was only $12 to watch or race. And $12, I could race all night with this thing. And believe you and me, I was running this thing. Quickest time that I'd ever put down, and that was a 13.2 at 105 miles an hour, 103 maybe. Don't remember off the top of my head. It was about a 2.0 foot on some Falcon ZX tires. And the entire time I was tracking the car, the only thing that broke on me while at the track was an alternator belt, which honestly was something that should have been replaced with maintenance anyways. I do also want to mention that around the same time, the injectors ended up failing on me. Literally what would happen is it would slowly drain into the cylinders and then wash down my cylinder walls. So with the injectors, as you probably imagine, I had to pull the plenum. And that was the first time, in my knowledge, that this plenum had ever been pulled because the EGR was connected, the coolant lines were all still there. It was a learning curve for myself, having never worked in the automotive field. And around the same time that the injectors were failing, I had started hanging around with a good buddy of mine, Alex, who played a huge part in my overall success of this car and I would say just life in general. Him and his family really helped me out through some difficult times for myself. Thank you guys so much, because without you guys, this car wouldn't be where it is today. I probably would have had to sell it and regretted every minute of it. But with their help, I was able to pull the plenum, replace the injectors, update some of the wiring in it. I even went ahead and painted the valve covers. They were supposed to be powder coated, but they ended up just getting paint. We cleaned up the intake manifold with just a wire brush and threw it all back together. Got the tune reflashed, and it was good. The car ran awesome. I was super happy with it after that. Still wasn't making a ton of money, still working 2 jobs, still going to school full time, and still trying to afford this car. With all that said, I realized, hey, I'm going to the track a lot. This car's gonna break more often. If something drastic happens, it's gonna be down. I did the math, I ran the numbers, and I decided that, hey, it'd be better for me to just get a daily. And what better daily than a Honda? And what better Honda than one that I already knew? Which brought me to get that little turd out there, my CRX. I bought that CRX in about, I think it was 2012. It was sitting in the back of a Schwinn bicycle shop. I went back to the guy and I spoke to him, and he ended up selling that car for me for 500 bucks. It wasn't running, but we got it running in the parking lot, drove it a quarter mile up the road, and it broke down. From there, I got it towed to my buddy's house, Alex, again, and he helped me diagnose it as an injector that was flooding the cylinders, washing down the cylinder walls. The CRX got 40 plus miles to the gallon. That was awesome for me. I was saving money on gas with that, and I was not paying much more in insurance for the two cars. After I'd done the injectors and the plenum pull and all that fun stuff, well, I still hadn't painted the car. And fortunately for me, for like my entire life that I've lived in the same house with my mother growing up, my neighbor painted cars in his driveway. Now, he was 3 doors down from me, but he was getting older at the time. I think he was right around 72 years old. And man, this is another person that helped me out so much with this car, because I didn't realize how much money it actually took to repaint a car. So the paint job anyways, my neighbor painted it in his front driveway. He did a little bit of body work. Car didn't need too much body work. It was mainly just a scuff and repaint. And it turned out all right. It had a lot of orange peel in it. Being that this man was 72 years old and still painting cars in his driveway, I gave the guy mad props because he freaking killed it. And to top it all off, he only charged me $500 for this paint job. I couldn't believe it. Now looking back, like that's not, I don't know if I could paint somebody else's car for $500. Luckily for me, at this time, I was working pretty heavily in automotive detail. Once I had finished buffing the entire car, I was so happy with how it came out. This was the first time I ever took the car out with a real camera and got real photos of the car. And I got home, I made a couple minor edits in Photoshop or editing program. I don't even remember what editing program it was, but I took care of all the editing once I got home, and the photos just came out phenomenal, as you can see here. What happened throughout 2014 and I would say most of 2015 is the car just kind of sat. The worst thing you can do for one of these cars, you guys, is to just let it sit. The car eventually got to a point where the mileage was getting higher and higher, and it was starting to get questionable. It was due for a 120K maintenance. It had some oil leaks that needed repaired. Turbos were getting laggier and laggier. And all at the same time, I was ordering and buying new parts for the car to prepare for the 120K maintenance. I had purchased new turbos that I got for a really good deal from a local, shout out Harry, Z-Tuner, who helped me out with those. My first set of 2871 turbos. And at the time, Ash had also released his turbo manifolds. I decided it was time to do the 120K kit. And while we're in there, we're just gonna pull the motor, reseal the whole thing, clean it all up, do an engine refresh, put the turbos on and tune it, right? So I had all these parts that I'd been collecting for several years, and about 2015, 2016, I decided it was time to start on the 120K kit, but I didn't want to just do the timing belt. So with that said, decided to pull the motor. Had the car at my friend Alex's house. He had just installed a lift in his garage at that time. So I was fortunate enough to drop the motor out the bottom my very first time. It was very sketchy for both of us. So once we got the motor out of the car, we realized that all the tools we really needed was actually at my friend Alex's work. I didn't really have too many tools of my own at the time because I had spent all my money on parts. I actually broke down the Z motor the first time at a dealership. It was at a Ford diesel shop, and he had all of his tools back there. They had a spare lift and everything. The big thing that for me here in all this, hanging out with the friends that I chose to hang out with at this point in time, I gained so much automotive knowledge from just tinkering on different stuff with different friends every single day of the week. I feel like I'm forever indebted. So shout out Alex. I know you're watching this. Thank you. While the car was at my buddy's house with the engine being rebuilt, I was on the lookout for some wheels. I'm always on the lookout for good deals on random stuff, and somebody posted some wheels that I'd known about for a very long time. And well, that was these wheels. They came off of black RX-7 that I had seen sitting outside my buddy's shop for a number of years. May I say, these wheels look freaking great on the back of the car. What was most convenient about putting these wheels on and getting them to fit while I was painting the car there was the fact that I could do the body work as I was rolling the fenders. So if I messed something up, which first time rolling fenders, yeah, I wrinkled the fenders pretty good, but I was able to fix them before I laid the paint on it. As for the paint job that I did, while the engine was being rebuilt, obviously the engine was out of the car. I went through and repainted the car myself at my buddy's shop. So we built a paint booth out of PVC pipe and Visqueen and some duct tape. And it certainly wasn't an air-conditioned booth because I was sweating. I was dripping in sweat trying to paint this car. It was not easy. It was not fun. I was so surprised that I could put out such a good quality paint job on my own. It's super worth it to learn, and just especially body panels. If you can start with a body panel here and there, just do it yourself. Is it a perfect paint job? No, but it's good enough for myself, and I can say that I did it. And then I reassembled the bottom end, brought it back to my buddy's shop, and reassembled the motor and heads and turbos and all that stuff over the next year, and I finally got it in the car. And it fired up pretty good. It ran for a little while. I think I got about 300 miles in on it. And then one of my freeze plugs started leaking on me. Fortunately, I had to drop the subframe, remove the motor mount just to get to the freeze plug. So I put the new freeze plug in and then started driving the car, and about 20-30 miles in, it started knocking. The worst thing ever. And at this point, I didn't know what to do. So I parked the car, and life was hitting me fast. I was moving away, and the car sat. Then about 8 months later, I moved about an hour away from my hometown. Now, I had started a job at a different dealership. I met somebody who was building a 2JZ. We talked a lot of smack back and forth, basically, when I first met him, because he was a 2JZ super guy, and I was a 300ZX owner, and it was really funny. It struck a nerve, and I told him that, I'm going to throw my car together, and it'll be running in half the time it takes him to finish his. I went all out. Pulled the motor apart, completely refreshed it, rebuilt it, put it all back together. I got the car running. I went through and I tried my very best to bulletproof the entire oil system. I did not want a spun rod bearing. I was so afraid of that happening again. Got the car running on that, and it ran flawless. I ended up tuning it. I was like, well, I'll start tuning it, seeing if I can get it running, on my own, or well enough on my own. And if I need to, I'll bring it to a tuner. Well, you'd probably guessed it, I ended up just tuning the entire car myself. I went to an event locally called FL2K. Drove probably 300 miles on it, beat on it all night. While I was down there, I also went to my buddy's shop, put the car on the dyno where it made 601 horsepower, and I think it was 520 foot-pounds of torque on only 19 PSI of boost. Now, when I moved up here and I first rebuilt the car, I was able to keep it at my work until I quit. Worst case scenario, I ended up finding a storage unit. So the storage unit lasted for about a year, and then eventually I ended up looking for other sources. I started talking to this guy who ran a shop out of Tampa. It was fairly new. He had just opened up probably a year ago. And then we came to an agreement that, hey, I'd help him out with some cars, and he could let me park my Z there, and became a very good friendship. And actually, you guys may see him on the channel here soon. Mike FDA, shout out if you guys want to follow Full Detail Automotive on YouTube, Instagram, the whole 9 yards. Go check him out. I was able to store my car at Full Detail Automotive for about a year and a half, 2 years, until we bought this house. And it worked out really good for everyone, for both of us. And then what was most ironic about it is I kept telling myself, I just need to keep the car running. I just need to keep the car running. The car stayed running. And then, I swear, it's like a twist of fate. And I did one final pull up the highway, leaving a car meet, going home. We were actually in the process of moving in here. Something happened. It was making a very loud ticking noise. So I got the car towed home, parked it. We had just bought a house and I didn't have the money to fix it, and I didn't want to look at it. So it sat. The unfortunate part of all this is the ticking I heard. All that had happened was a bolt had backed out of the rear timing cover and was touching my cam gear. That's it. But with this car and my CRX, I have learned to do most things that shops would send out to 3 or 4 different other shops to have done. Obviously, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but if you put your mind to it and do as much research to learn as much as you can learn to do it yourself. Sometimes you'll have to do it twice to get it right, but at least you're not paying somebody else to do it twice to get it right. But anyways, that's the last 14 years of ownership with this car. I am literally coming up, April 1st, 2010. That was when I bought it. But that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Vroom. Vroom, vroom.